The family demanded a sacrifice for my sister. And then the doctor said that I wasn't part of their family at all. It all started in a hospital waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and quiet desperation. My mother stood over me, her face a mask of fury, her voice a razor blade. "Caitlin is dying, Amara! Dying! And you're sitting there debating whether to help?" My father stood behind her, a silent, intimidating wall of judgment. In the wheelchair between them, my sister Caitlin, pale and weakened by chemo, managed to flash me a familiar, triumphant smirk. The central conflict was simple. Caitlin's kidneys were failing, and I was her only potential living donor. The choice, they insisted, was just as simple. Give up a kidney or become a murderer. I tried to reason with them, my voice barely a whisper against my mother's storm. "It's a major surgery, there are risks. I need time to think." My mother laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Risks? Your sister is running out of time and you're worried about a scar." My first attempt at a solution was to appeal to logic, to ask for medical consultation, for psychological evaluation, for anything that would slow down the runaway train of their demands. It only made things worse. It proved to them that I was stalling, that I was the selfish, ungrateful child they always said I was. The choice pressed down on me, crushing the air from my lungs. On one hand was a lifetime of resentment for a sister who had made my childhood a living hell. On the other was the simple, biological fact that she would die without me. As the pressure mounted, Dr. Evans, the transplant coordinator, stepped in. Seeing the raw animosity in the room, he made a suggestion. "Before we discuss this any further," he said calmly, "we need to run the comprehensive genetic compatibility panel. The initial tests show you're a possible match, but this final test is definitive. It will tell us with 100% certainty if a transplant is even possible." My mother seized on his words, her eyes glinting. "Do it! Do the test now! Then she'll have no more excuses." And just like that, the stakes were raised. My agonizing moral choice was about to be replaced by a cold, clinical verdict I couldn't escape. I agreed to the test. It felt less like a decision and more like a surrender. As a nurse led me away to draw my blood, I could feel their collective gaze burning into my back. This was my penance, my final trial. If the test came back positive, my body was no longer my own. The hour we had to wait for the results was the longest of my life. My family used every second of it to dismantle what was left of my resolve. "I remember when we brought you home from the hospital," my mother began, her voice dripping with false nostalgia. "Caitlin was so excited to have a baby sister. She loved you so much." I stared at her, astonished. The Caitlin I remembered had accidentally pushed me down the stairs when I was 5, breaking my arm. The Caitlin I knew had burned my acceptance letter to art school because she couldn't stand me having something that was just mine. Every attempt I made to defend myself, to bring up the past, was met with denial and scorn. "Such a drama queen," my father would boom. "Always twisting things, making yourself the victim." The spiral of failure was suffocating. Their version of reality was a fortress, and my memories were pebbles thrown against its walls. They chipped away at me until I started to doubt myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe the years of cruelty were just childish pranks I'd blown out of proportion. I felt myself shrinking in the hard plastic chair, the weight of their expectations pressing me into a small, silent ball of guilt. Just when I thought I could bear it no longer, Caitlin began to cough, a weak, rattling sound that seized the attention of the room. She slumped in her wheelchair, her hand fluttering to her chest. "I can't breathe," she wheezed, her eyes locking onto mine with a look of pure accusation. My mother shrieked for a doctor. My father glared at me as if I had personally stolen the air from his daughter's lungs. I was drowning in despair, convinced that I was a monster, that my hesitation was killing her. This was my defeat. Dr. Evans returned, his face unreadable, a file in his hand. The room fell silent. My mother held Caitlin's hand, who had miraculously recovered from her breathing difficulties. "I have the results of the comprehensive panel," Dr. Evans said, looking directly at me. "Amara, you are not a compatible donor for Caitlin." A single hysterical laugh bubbled out of my chest. Relief, pure and overwhelming, flooded through me. It was over. I was free. The decision had been made for me by science, by genetics, by fate. I didn't have to be the villain. But how? My father stammered. The first tests. Dr. Evans looked uncomfortable. The initial blood typing showed a possible match, which isn't uncommon. But the deeper genetic markers tell a different story, a very conclusive one. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. The reason you are not a match is that there is no biological relationship between you and Caitlin. You are not sisters. The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air and sound from the room. I stared at the people I called my parents, watching the blood drain from their faces. Then the trap sprang. So? Caitlin's voice was sharp, cutting through the stunned silence. She pushed herself forward in her wheelchair, her eyes gleaming with a feverish, desperate light. So what if we're not sisters? Stranger-to-stranger donations happen all the time. People donate to people they've never even met. She turned her gaze on me, a cruel, manipulative smile playing on her lips. This doesn't change anything, Amara. It just proves what a good person you are. You don't have to do it because you're my sister. You can do it because it's the right thing to do. I was in the lowest place I had ever been. My moment of liberation, my scientific proof of innocence, had been twisted into the ultimate moral test. They had taken my one escape route and turned it into an even more damning cage. There, at the bottom, staring at their desperate, twisted faces, I saw it. The detail that changed everything. It wasn't in their words. It was in their shared, panicked silence when the doctor revealed the truth. It was in the flicker of guilt in my father's eyes and the tremor in my mother's hand. They had always known. All of it, the constant comparisons, the way Caitlin could do no wrong, the way I was always found lacking, the years I spent wondering what was so fundamentally broken inside me that my own family couldn't love me properly. It all clicked into place with a sickening, clarifying snap. I wasn't their bad daughter. I was just not their daughter. The 30-year-old burden of not being good enough evaporated. It was never my fault. My choice in that moment became crystal clear. I stood up, feeling a strength I had never known. The exhaustion and guilt were gone, replaced by a cold, calm certainty. I looked at Caitlin, really looked at her, not as my sister but as a stranger. A cruel stranger who had built her throne on my pain, enabled by two adults who were living a lie. You're right, I said, and my voice was steady, clear, and my own. Strangers can be matches, and people can choose to save them. I picked up my purse from the floor. I could. I let the word hang in the air, watching the hope flicker in her eyes. Then I let it fall. But I won't. The dam of their composure broke. My mother lunged forward, screaming about betrayal. My father bellowed threats. But their words were just noise now, echoes from a life that was no longer mine. I turned to Dr. Evans. Thank you for the test, I said. Please document my definitive refusal. Then I walked out of the waiting room, out of the hospital, and into the rest of my life. I didn't look back. They had demanded a sacrifice from family, a debt of blood and bone. But I was a stranger, and I finally understood I owed them absolutely nothing.